They say every small town has its secrets, but some towns are born from them. This happened years ago, back when I still believed that time made things easier. It doesn't. And before I begin, I need you to understand something. I didn't make up a single word of this. It happened in a town called Sleepy Hollow. Yeah, that Sleepy Hollow. The name rings bells for anyone who's ever read Washington Irving or watched late-night TV reruns. The town of fog, fear, and the headless horseman. Except our version had no horseman. It had a boy. A lame boy. Quiet, pale, eyes too big for his skull, and a limp that made you wince when he walked. His name was Daniel. He lived in the little blue house at the end of Pine Street, and for as long as I can remember, Daniel looked exactly the same. I first met him in 2004. We were both around 10, give or take. I was new in town, and my mom insisted I bring over cookies to the neighbor's kid. Daniel opened the door, said nothing, took the plate, and slowly closed it again. That was it. No smile, no curiosity, no noise behind him in the house. I stood there blinking until I heard the click of the lock. A few days later, he was sitting on the curb outside, just watching the street. I sat beside him, no talking, no playing, just sitting. It became our thing. I started bringing him snacks, little boxes of juice, granola bars, leftover cookies. He never asked for them, never thanked me, but he always ate them, and he never blinked while he chewed, just stared at the houses like he was waiting. I remember one day, it must have been summer 2005, I asked him why he always sat outside. He said, "Because sometimes they forget I'm in there." I didn't know what that meant. Still don't. I didn't see him every day. Sometimes weeks would pass, but he was always exactly the same. Same hoodie, same limp, same flat stare. Back then, I thought he was just different. Now, I know better. I moved away from Sleepy Hollow in 2008, right after high school. I didn't think much about Daniel. He'd faded into the background of my memory like a blurry dream you assume was real until you realize it couldn't have been. But I came back in 2019. My mother passed, and the house became mine. Sleepy Hollow hadn't changed much. The trees were a little more skeletal, the houses a little more hollow. Same old corner store, same tired faces, and that thick, slow-moving silence that clings to towns like this. I unpacked slowly, reliving memories with every box. I came across old photos, birthday cards, newspaper clippings, all the sentimental clutter of a life paused and picked up again. And then I saw him, across the street, sitting on the same curb, same hoodie, same limp, same face. At first I laughed. Must have been a younger brother, a cousin, maybe even the kid of someone who'd bought the house. But no. I asked around. That house still belonged to the same family, the Doyles. Old woman lived there now. Her grandson Daniel still stayed with her. I felt my mouth dry. He looked exactly the same. Not in that, wow, he aged well kind of way. I mean exactly the same. Same skinny limbs, same dark circled eyes, same heavy dragging step. I checked my old photos. I had one, just one, with him in it, taken in 2006, I think. I zoomed in, compared it to the figure I saw that afternoon. No difference. Not similar, not uncanny. Identical. I told myself it was just coincidence. I hadn't slept well. Maybe I was projecting. But something about his eyes bothered me. Not the color, not the shape, just that they never changed. Even kids who are quiet, withdrawn, strange, they grow. They blink. They smile. They shift with time. But Daniel? Daniel was frozen. And something in me started to remember. I didn't intend to get involved. I really didn't. But once you notice something, once it hooks you, you start seeing it everywhere. Every morning, Daniel sat on the curb. Every evening, he vanished. Some days I watched from behind my curtains. Other days I walked past and nodded. He never nodded back. And always, always, he looked exactly the same. Same posture, same blank stare, like a paused video in a loop. I asked around, cautiously. At the cafe, I mentioned him offhandedly to a couple of older locals. Their faces tightened, not with confusion, but recognition. A woman said, "Oh, the Doyle boy, quiet kid." Then she turned the subject like she'd touched a hot stove. That night, I dug through my mother's photo boxes again. Buried deep was a neighborhood picture from Halloween 2004. A group of kids in costumes, and there he was. Same hoodie, same limp, same face. I scanned it, zoomed in. An overwhelming chill crawled up my spine. There was something off in the way he stood. The other kids smiled, moved, shifted naturally. He didn't. His figure was stiff, eyes glassy even in the photo, like he wasn't part of the picture, but inserted into it. The more I looked, the more wrong it felt. And the memories started returning. I remember giving him juice boxes. I remember sitting beside him in silence. I remember thinking it was odd that he never invited me in, not once. But one memory hit me hardest. It was winter, snow on the ground. I was maybe 11. I had the flu, but I bundled up to go see him. I don't even know why. I remember standing on the Doyle's porch. I knocked. The old woman answered, his grandmother, I guess. When I asked if Daniel was home, she blinked. "Daniel?" she repeated slowly. "Honey, Daniel's sleeping. He's been sleeping for days." But I had just seen him 10 minutes earlier, on the curb. That memory came back with startling clarity, and I felt something inside me shift. Not fear, not yet, just the first flicker of something worse. Recognition. Sleepy Hollow had always been a quiet town, but now it felt too quiet, like it was trying to muffle something. Over the next few weeks, I watched Daniel more closely, not obsessively, or at least that's what I told myself. But curiosity has teeth, and it bites deep when you try to ignore it. He appeared at the same time every morning, sat in the exact same place, always alone, always staring across the street. Sometimes I thought he was staring at me. Then one day, I noticed something. There was a cat, a big gray tab, Stray, probably. I'd seen it slink around the block for years. That morning, it crossed the road and rubbed against Daniel's leg. He didn't move, didn't look down. But when I looked again, seconds later, the cat was gone. No trace, like it'd never been there. I checked the bushes, the street, asked a few neighbors. Nothing. That was the first time I felt the unease solidify into something heavier, like the atmosphere around him was hungry. Later that week, I ran into an old classmate at the hardware store. We caught up. Eventually, I asked, "Hey, you remember Daniel Doyle?" His face paled. "You mean?" I tried to rationalize it all. I told myself it was nostalgia, grief, stress, anything but what it felt like. Haunting. But Daniel was still there, still sitting across the street, still watching the world like a dog waiting for a door to open. I decided to speak to him. It was dusk. The air was heavy with the smell of wet leaves. I crossed the road and stood beside him. He didn't look at me. "Hey, Daniel." Silence. "You remember me?" I asked. He turned, slowly. His head moved like it hadn't in years, stiff, unsure. Then his eyes met mine, and something in them was wrong. Not dead, not cold, just too old, like he'd lived too long in a small container and forgotten how to pretend. "You brought me things," he said. His voice wasn't high or childlike. It was monotone, timeless. "You fed me, even when I didn't ask. That was kind." I froze. Daniel looked back at the road. "Most don't." "Don't what?" "Feed me, see me, remember me." Something in his voice cracked then, just slightly, like a fracture in concrete. "But you always did." I didn't know what to say. Then, softly, he added, "They're starting again, you know." I blinked. "What is?" "The vanishings, the animals. Later it will be people again." That sent a cold ripple through me. "How do you know that?" He turned to me once more. His face was calm, too calm. "Because that's how it always starts. And when it does, they'll look at me like they always do and pretend they don't remember." He stood up. His limp was still there, dragging his left leg behind him. But there was no weakness in the way he moved. Just inevitability. Before I could speak again, he walked back toward the Doyle house. The screen door creaked open and shut. No lights came on. I stood in the dark street, heart hammering, mind spiraling. Because that night, in the local news app, a headline hit me like a punch. Missing dog found mutilated near reservoir. Third case this week. And all I could think was, he warned me.
After that night, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started logging everything. When Daniel appeared, when he vanished, news reports, animal disappearances, unusual noises. The timeline matched disturbingly well. Every surge of local incidents was followed by his sudden absence. He'd vanish for 2, sometimes 3 days, then return. Always at dawn, always to the same spot. It was as if something inside him had fed and gone quiet again. The town, as always, acted blind, but it wasn't ignorance, it was refusal. I tried to ask more people, quietly, casually, what they remembered about Daniel. Most looked confused, uncomfortable. Some said things like, "He's always been off." "Still around? Wow, didn't realize." "You know, I think he used to go to school with my cousin, or maybe it was his dad." Their timelines didn't make sense. They spoke of him across generations. It wasn't just that Daniel hadn't aged. It was that no one seemed to know how long he'd been there at all. I went back to the local library archives, my first time in years. The room smelled of dust and slow decay. I pulled microfilm reels from the early 1980s, then the 70s. I searched for anything on the Doyles. Weeks passed. Nothing. Then something. An article from 1979. Small, obscure. Local boy dies after falling into quarry. Family requests privacy. Daniel Doyle, age 10, was found drowned near the old limestone pit. Rescue workers noted difficulty recovering the body due to a sudden cave-in during the search. The boy's grandmother declined to comment. A closed casket funeral will be held Friday at St. Matthias Cemetery. The photo, grainy, faded, but there he was. Same face, same hoodie, same stare. My chest went tight, my mouth dry. He had died 40 years ago, and yet every morning he sat across from my house like a child stuck on repeat. As I walked home, wind pushing against my coat like cold fingers, a thought pushed its way to the surface. What if he never left? Not the town, not death. Sleepy Hollow wasn't asleep. It was numb, wrapped in denial like a damp blanket. That night, I couldn't stop staring at the article. The photo of Daniel, dead since 1979, and yet still dragging his foot past my window like nothing ever changed. The next morning, I did something stupid. I walked over to the Doyle house and knocked on the door. The porch creaked under me. The wood felt soft, almost rotten. A sour mildew smell hung in the air like breath trapped too long. I waited. No answer. I knocked again, 3 short raps. Then I heard the sound. Footsteps. Slow, one dragging. I swallowed. The door opened a sliver. No chain, no lock, just a narrow crack like the house itself didn't want to open fully. Daniel stood there, same as ever. Up close, I noticed how unnaturally smooth his skin looked. Not young, untouched, waxen, like the kind of texture you only see in statues or corpses. "I saw the article," I said, voice shaky. "From 1979. His eyes didn't change. "You drowned. You were buried." A beat of silence. "Was I?" he said, almost gently. I felt dizzy. "What are you?" I whispered. Daniel blinked once, slowly. "I'm what's left when people forget what they should have remembered." I stepped back. "Why me? Why do I remember you?" He opened the door a little wider, and for the first time I saw the house behind him. It wasn't normal. The wallpaper peeled like skin. The air shimmered with a wet heat. Shadows on the walls twitched like insects trapped under glass. "You fed me," Daniel said again, voice soft. "You were kind. You saw me." Behind him, something moved, just for a moment. Something tall, wrong, like a shadow trying to wear a human shape. Then the door shut. I stumbled back across the street, locked my own door, closed the curtains, sat in the dark, shaking, because whatever Daniel was, he wasn't alone in that house. After that, the house across the street changed. Not physically, not in a way most people would notice, but to me, it began to pulse, like something alive was buried under its foundation, breathing slowly beneath the floorboards. The windows were always dark, even during the day. The curtains never moved, but I began to feel like something was watching me through them. The scratches in my walls returned, louder now, more deliberate. And with them came a smell, faint but undeniable. Rot, wet earth, metal. I stopped sleeping. Instead, I searched. I dug deeper into local archives, online forums, obituaries, even classified ads. And I found something strange. Every 11 years, like clockwork, Sleepy Hollow experienced a spike in unexplained incidents, the kind no one wants to talk about. Pets missing, children wandering off, whole families moving away in the middle of the night, an uptick in church attendance, closed casket funerals. The last spike? 2008, right after I moved away. The next was predicted for now, 2019. I stared at the numbers,
trying to ignore the chill crawling up my spine. Then I thought of something else. Something stupid, childish. I searched my own name. No obituaries, obviously, but there was something. A blog post from an old parenting blog, now archived. An old neighborhood mom describing local kids who played together. She listed names, mine and Daniel's. But then a comment below. "There's no Daniel in that class. Must be thinking of someone else." Another comment years later said, "My brother used to talk about a limping kid named Daniel. Weird little dude. Never met him myself. Thought he was imaginary." Imaginary. A shared hallucination. Or maybe a parasite of memory. Something that exists only because we keep it fed. With attention, with kindness, with fear. And I had fed it most of all. I started remembering things that didn't make sense. Not new memories, old ones, twisted at the edges, like damaged film that suddenly plays clearer. I remembered visiting Daniel one winter. Snow falling in thick, silent sheets. He'd been sitting on his porch, lips blue, eyes wide and distant. I brought him hot chocolate. He didn't drink it, just held the cup. But now I remembered something more. He'd whispered, "Don't let them take me back." I hadn't known what he meant. I thought he was playing. But that phrase echoed now louder, older. Back to what? To where? I dug deeper into that night, clawing through memory like peeling paint. I remembered how the snow near his feet hadn't melted, not at all. The flakes landed and stayed, as if he wasn't warm-blooded, as if he wasn't alive. And worse, I remembered what was behind him in the doorway. A shape, unmoving, watching. My hands trembled. This wasn't just a ghost story. It wasn't a haunting. It was an occupation. Something had taken Daniel the night he died, or perhaps what was left of him. And now that thing was living here, again, because it had been fed. Fed by kindness, by memory, by me. I looked around my living room and realized how many photos still included him. I had kept them, protected them. I'd remembered him. And in doing so, I'd sustained him. My phone buzzed. A new notification from the local alert system. Missing child, 9-year-old Jacob Miller was last seen leaving Pine Street around 6:15 p.m. Residents urged to remain alert. Pine Street, my street, Daniel's street. I dropped the phone, and from across the road, behind the still curtain of the Doyle house, something moved.
I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the window, lights off, watching the Doyle house like a hunter waits for movement in the brush. At 2:13 a.m., it happened. The front door opened slowly, no sound, no creak. Daniel stepped out, or what looked like Daniel. But this time, something was different. He wasn't limping. He glided, as if the body was just a costume, a form being worn. He crossed the yard barefoot, shirt soaked in something dark. He stopped in the middle of the road, directly in front of my house. Then, without lifting his head, he looked at me, through the curtains, through the darkness. He saw me, and he smiled. It wasn't a boy's smile. It wasn't a human smile. It was too wide, too calm, too knowing. Then he held out his hand, palm up, like an offering. In it, a sneaker, small, blue, a child's, still wet. I stumbled backward, heart pounding. I tried to breathe, tried to make sense of what I was seeing. When I looked again, he was gone. No Daniel, no sneaker, no trace. I rushed outside, barefoot, numb, shaking. The street was silent. I crossed to the Doyle house. The air felt thick, like walking through a submerged dream. I climbed the porch, raised my hand to knock again, but the door was already open. Inside, it was dark, and yet I could see everything. The walls pulsed, moved slightly. There were stains on the floor, the ceiling, the banister, and photos, hundreds of them, pinned along the staircase, all of them of Daniel. In every decade, every era, always the same. Always surrounded by different people, different children, different towns. Like he'd been doing this forever. Collecting, growing, changing places, feeding. And the last photo on the wall? Me. Holding a juice box, smiling beside him. I should have run. Instead, I stepped inside. The door closed behind me, slowly, gently, like it didn't want to disturb the house. The air was warm, too warm. It smelled like old wood, wet leaves, and something sweet gone sour. I moved through the living room. The couch was wrapped in yellowed plastic. The TV was unplugged. A rotary phone sat on the table, its cord frayed and coiled like a dead snake. On every wall, photos, all of Daniel, always the same age, always with different people, kids, adults, families, smiling, standing, staring. One photo caught my eye. Daniel at a dinner table with a family I didn't recognize. Everyone was eating, laughing, except him. He was looking directly at the camera, eyes empty. Then I saw the date written in the corner, 1963. I moved deeper, past the kitchen, down the hall. The smell grew stronger, metallic now, sharp. At the end of the hallway, a door, old, warped, painted shut, but cracked open just enough to let darkness spill through. I pushed it. Wood groaned like a wounded thing. The basement steps yawned downward, vanishing into black. And then I heard it. Breathing. Not heavy, not panicked. Rhythmic, like something asleep. Except it was too loud, too close. I stepped down,
Each stair felt soaked through, soft like meat. The bottom revealed a space both too small and impossibly wide, a contradiction my brain rejected. The walls were wrong, shifting subtly like lungs drawing in breath. And at the center, Daniel. No hoodie, no smile. Just skin, thin, veined, stretched like wax, eyes glowing dimly in the dark. And behind him, the shape. Not a person, not even a thing pretending to be a person. Just a presence, a shadow with fingers, a ripple of memory, loss, and hunger. He didn't speak, but I heard the voice anyway. Not in my ears, in my bones. You kept me here. You fed me with your attention, with your guilt, with your fear. You made me stay. I couldn't move. My body was frozen, not from fear, but from recognition. Like I was looking at something I'd always known existed, but never wanted to name. Daniel stepped forward. The shadow behind him pulsed, towering like a curtain of shadow stitched together from things lost, forgotten, and buried. He wasn't a boy. Not anymore. Maybe he never was. You saw me when others wouldn't. You fed me. And now, you carry me. I shook my head. I didn't know. I was just a kid. But you remembered. That's all it takes. The shadow writhed. Whispers filled the room, not words but echoes of laughter, crying, apologies, guilt. You think I came to you? Daniel asked. I didn't. My throat tightened. You came back. You brought the memories, the photos. You reopened the wound. He stepped closer, and I saw it. Beneath the skin, his body wasn't solid. It shimmered like smoke held in the shape of a boy. Why me? I whispered. You were kind. You gave when no one else did. You made me real. I backed away, shaking. What do you want? Daniel tilted his head. To go back. To sleep. The shadow behind him surged forward, not touching me, just surrounding me. It felt like sinking into warm water, like drowning in my own past. And for that, he said, you have to forget. The photos on the wall around me began to curl and blacken. Faces vanished, backgrounds faded. Even the images of me, gone. You must forget me completely. Erase me. Let me die. He stepped closer still. His skin began to peel away like smoke in wind. His voice cracked, because every time someone remembers, I come back. I stay. I feed. The basement grew darker, the weight of memory suffocating. He reached out his hand, not to hurt me, but to let go. Do it, he said. Let me go. And suddenly, for the first time since I was 10 years old, I believed him. I stood there in the basement, surrounded by breathing walls and a boy who was never a boy, only a vessel, a memory with teeth. His hand was still outstretched, waiting,
All I had to do was let go. Let go of the photos. Let go of the stories. Let go of that cold winter afternoon with the juice box and the boy who never smiled. "Forget me," he whispered again, "and I'll be gone." But forgetting isn't easy. We cling to memory like it gives us weight, like the past is a map we can still follow. Even the worst parts, we hoard them. Because if we forget, who are we then? He stepped closer. The shadow behind him pulsed once, like a breath held and then exhaled for the last time. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the old photo I'd brought with me, the one from Halloween 2004. Daniel standing behind us, pale, staring, a scarecrow among children. I held it in my hand. He nodded once, so I tore it in half, and then again, and again, until nothing but crumpled fragments remained in my shaking fingers. Daniel exhaled. The basement shuddered, not violently, more like a building sighing after centuries of tension. The shadow recoiled, not in anger, but in release. The photos on the wall crumbled to dust. The smell began to lift. The air lightened. Daniel looked at me one last time. His face, that waxen mask, began to fade. His eyes dimmed. His form flickered. He smiled. Not wide, not unnatural, just soft, grateful. And then, without sound, without spectacle, he vanished. So did the shadow behind him. The house groaned once, and then it was still. I walked back upstairs in silence. The wallpaper no longer pulsed, the walls no longer whispered. It was just a house. Empty. For the first time in decades. Across the street, my house waited, and inside it, a life that had been shaped by a boy who never should have existed. Weeks have passed since that night. Sleepy Hollow has gone back to being what it always pretended to be. Quiet, simple, forgetful. The missing child, Jacob Miller, was found safe 2 towns over. Wandered off, they said. Didn't remember a thing. No one questioned it. No one looked deeper.
The Doyle house sits empty now. Not abandoned, just unnoticed. It doesn't pulse anymore. The windows are open. The porch light never comes on. People walk past it without hesitation. It's like the town collectively decided to skip over it, erase it. And me, I tried to do the same. I deleted the photos, burned the rest, donated old boxes. I stopped looking for proof, stopped trying to tell anyone what I saw, because I realized that was the final part of it. The trap isn't remembering, it's needing to prove it, to validate it, to share it. That's how he came back. Not through evil, not through violence, through attention.
through the well-meaning eyes of a lonely kid who just wanted to feed a strange boy on the curb. But sometimes kindness leaves the door open for monsters, and I left it wide open. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on my own porch and stare at the spot where Daniel used to sit, and I wonder, was he ever really gone, or just waiting? I tell myself he's free now, that letting go was enough. But some mornings, when the fog's just right and the wind moves slow, I swear I hear it, a dragging step, a whisper on the sidewalk, a breath behind the door. And in those moments, I remember something I told myself long ago, something I'd nearly forgotten until now. I spent my childhood feeding the monster so it wouldn't eat me.